So let's look at an example. All right. And kind of walk through what this looks like in completed form. I'll give some feedback to this person because they were nice enough to share it in advance. And it'll give you some ideas for yourselves about what you can do, especially, as I said, this is a kind of an interesting one because it's a qualitative goal at the outset, right? So the result goal is this: immerse myself and all my emotions into the system as a trader to feel the pull of intuition and reside in a state of flow. So that is not a result from a monetary standpoint, but that is a result in terms of the quality of their decision-making and execution, on a day-to-day basis. And that's a very, very aggressive and aspirational type of goal. And so to do that is going to require a lot, at least in my mind. We'll get to some of the process and problems here. The other thing is to respect my risk management limits, obviously an important part of trading. Why do these goals matter? Intuition is the most fluid component of the system. This allows for a closer alignment of the market, which is naturally exchanging with the constant feed of new information. Risk management is the most effective component to prevent sharp drawdowns of emotional climaxes. So yeah, should all make sense, right? Not overly complicated, but very clear and very direct. So now we get into the process goals, right? So number one is understand the pull of intuition, right? And how immediately after the pull is felt, write down what you feel. Be meticulous about the details, what thoughts arise, and what is felt throughout the body. So this is like a mapping process, right? Mapping what intuition feels like. Understand the resisting force of not listening to the initial pull of intuition. And when the pull is ignored or dismissed, describe all that follows it. Now, the thing that I would add here is also all that precedes it, right? If you're going to correctly identify intuition, it's not just what happens when the pull is ignored, all right? And kind of using the punishment of failing to recognize it as motivation to continue to check it, but instead understand, right, some of the signals that arise just before it's created. So again, deepening that kind of mapping process. Understand and witness the benefits of cutting myself off when the risk limits are triggered. Write down on my blackboard the accumulated financial effect of not respecting the risk limit. So you can see that this person is attempting to use kind of pain and punishment as a form of learning, right? So when the pull is ignored, right, in the previous one, or when I'm not respecting my risk limits, let's use the loss on that board as a way of making it obvious. The problem with using that is it might not be really understanding why it is that those risk limits are violated at times. And as we'll see in the next section, that trend continues and is my kind of primary recommendation here. Okay, it's very, very important that you're not just kind of covering over your problems, but you are instead actually understanding the cause of them. All right, so problem number one, distinguishing between the inactive response and the instinctive response and the intuitive one. Now, so for those who are not familiar, this whole discussion is about intuition. For those who are not familiar with my stance on intuition, go to the website, jaredtendler.com, and you'll see under the resources tab, a free intuition ebook. It describes intuition in very kind of detailed terms. And I get into one of these topics, which is the difference between instinct and intuition. I'm not going to get into in a big way now, but the bottom line is that instinct is a more primitive way of decision-making, and intuition is your highest level of decision-making. So this person is trying to make sure that there is a clear understanding between when that reaction is more intuitive, right, and high level versus when it's more instinctive and low level, because sometimes they can feel very, very similar, although the differences become more clear as you get kind of deeper into studying the differences. So revisit and study the emotional profiles, identify the common cues present in these emotional states, right? That is, again, profiling the differences, mapping the differences so that there's that clarity in the moment and you can make the decision in the moment as to whether or not it's intuition or instinct. Remaining confident when the pull of intuition proves to be wrong on any given trade, right? And so the way to correct that is to analyze the trade session and identify potential technical cues that might have signaled failure on that given position. Sure, okay, that makes sense. For me, again, given the trend of kind of cover over issues, if you lose confidence because your intuition is wrong, that might suggest a little bit of either weakness in your confidence or weakness in your belief and kind of integrity in your understanding of what that intuition is. So again, I don't want that issue to get covered over and blocked out by just thinking about sort of the potential downsides of making that mistake, right? And then lastly, exercising my limit once triggered, especially after experiencing a session where it would have continued, the outcome would have the outcome would have been financially positive, right? So how do they solve that? Constantly going over my mental hand history of overriding my risk limits to clarify that on the long term, respecting my limits is beneficial. So again, the way to solve, I think the mental hand history really needs to get at the root of the problem, not just cover over, kind of the problem per se.